Okay, so profit, right. Maybe not the most exciting word for some of you, but
Yeah, you're not wrong. It could definitely get a bad rap. But
stick with us.
yeah,
What if I told you that profit could be the key to actually making a real impact out there?
that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to be looking at the work of Global Strategist.
Sophie Krantz.
Yeah, she's all about connecting profit and purpose. And she's focusing
On
on,
a growth markets, right.
right, those ones that everyone's talking about. McKinsey has actually predicted that they,
Could be worth, what was it, like 29 to 48 trillion dollars.
yeah, by 2040. So,
It's a lot of money.
yeah, it's not chump change.
Okay, so the big question, can we actually do good and do well financially, especially in these markets that are like changing all the time?
I think that's something a lot of people are trying to figure out right now. Of course, we all want to make a positive impact, but
You need money to do that.
yeah, even the most purpose-driven groups out there, they need a way to fund the work. That's where,
Krantz's Profit Plus model comes in.
yeah,
Profit Plus sounds like having your cake and eating it too.
well, that's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah.
Krantz is arguing that profit, if you see it as a tool and not the end goal,
Yeah.
it can actually unlock a lot of opportunities. So think about purpose-driven organizations. If they're only relying on like donations or grants,
They're kind of vulnerable, right?
yeah, what if the funding disappears?
It happens all the time. Nonprofits having to like shut down a program because they don't have the money anymore. Tough situation.
Exactly. That's what the Profit Plus model tries to fix. The financial returns, they actually become the driver behind solving real-world problems.
Okay, so instead of relying on, donations or whatever, the business actually makes the money.
And that money goes back into the purpose.
And then that money goes back into doing good.
Yeah,
But let's be realistic. Wealth and profits, they aren't really shared equally, are they?
that's true. Research from Oxfam shows that just since 2020, the 5 richest individuals in the world have doubled their wealth, while corporations are seeing record profits.
So it's not exactly a level playing field.
No. And I think this really highlights why it's so important to understand,
Where the value is being created.
yeah, where's it going and how can we capture it more fairly?
Especially with these high growth areas.
Exactly. We have to be strategic about it.
Yeah.
And that's where those 18 high growth arenas McKinsey identified come in.
Right. Things like AI, cybersecurity, future mobility. Sounds like the future.
They might seem a little futuristic now, but they're becoming the new normal.
Mm.
The thing is, these aren't just temporary trends.
They're like completely changing how the global economy works.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these, game-changing areas, but what's making them grow so fast?
Well, McKinsey says there are 3 main factors. First, we have technological and business model shifts. A good example is lithium-ion batteries.
Oh, yeah.
They went from this niche thing to powering electric vehicles.
It's crazy.
It's a classic example of how, as technology matures, it creates these huge opportunities for growth.
And it affects everything, like a domino effect.
Right. The second thing
Yeah.
is these growing incentives for investment. Look at how those early investments in cloud infrastructure.
Totally changed the tech world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, paved the way for other groups to become more efficient and pursue their own goals.
So it's like these initial investments start this chain reaction that leads to even more.
Innovation and growth.
Exactly.
And the last thing is the emergence of these large, fast-growing markets, especially in areas like digital healthcare and AI.
These markets are actually growing faster than the overall economy, right?
Yeah. It's a huge opportunity for companies to create solutions that address these like pressing needs while also making good money.
It's like being at the front of a wave.
That's a great way to put it.
So how do we actually use these insights? How do we make sure we're not just riding the wave, but steering it?
That's where Krantz offers some really useful advice. She says it's really important to understand
How the trends in these high growth areas actually connect to like your own business or your own interests.
Yeah. It's about finding
Your place in it all.
exactly. And then, thinking about how to leverage your unique position within these high growth areas.
So we need to be like opportunity detectives, always looking for ways to create value and make a difference.
That's a good way to think about it. And Krantz also suggests a few other things.
Oh, yeah.
First, she says, you got to identify the winners. Who's emerging as a leader in these spaces?
Oh, so like looking at the competition.
Right. You can either try to compete directly or find a niche where you can use your existing strengths.
Okay.
She says we should embrace this mindset of futures thinking.
Futures thinking. What's that?
It's about going beyond just trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding the potential impacts of these changes.
So not having a crystal ball, but being prepared for whatever comes next.
Right. And remember, all this potential value and profit.
It's not going to be evenly distributed.
No. Those who have insight and a good strategy, they'll be the ones to capture the value. And they can choose to do that in a way that benefits everyone.
It's about making choices that are good for everyone, not just yourself.
Exactly. But to actually take advantage of that opportunity, we have to step outside of our comfort zones.
And really challenge the status quo.
Yeah. Because if we want to make a real difference, we need to be open to new ideas and ways of doing things. And that starts with
Expanding our understanding of how value is created in this world that just keeps changing.
exactly.
It's like a call to action. Be
Yeah.
proactive, be strategic, and be part of shaping a future where purpose and profit actually work together.
Because at the end of the day, we all have the power to make a difference. But we need to be willing to get out of our comfort zones.
So it's not just what you do, but who you surround yourself with too, right?
Yeah. We have to be willing to engage with different viewpoints and, challenge our own assumptions.
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
You need to be around people who think differently.
How you learn.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding value creation, being open to different ideas, and getting out of our comfort zones. But what can we do with all this? How can we actually use this in our lives and our work?
That's the question, isn't it? And Krantz does offer some really practical advice. She says it's all about changing how we think about profit. Instead of seeing it as something bad or greedy, we need to see it as,
A tool.
a powerful tool for good.
It's not about getting rid of profit. It's about being intentional about how we make it and what we do with it.
Exactly. And that's where understanding those high-growth arenas becomes really important. You have to identify those opportunities.
Match your values.
Yeah, and then figure out how you can use them to create both financial success and positive impact.
So finding that place where your passions and skills
Can actually meet the needs of the world.
Exactly.
And Krantz actually has some specific steps we can take, which she calls the Profit Plus model.
A model. I like a good framework. So what does this profit plus model look like?
It all starts with recognizing that profit isn't inherently a bad thing. It's a tool. Like any tool, it can be used.
For good or bad?
Exactly. The important thing is to align your profit-seeking activities with...
Purpose.
Yeah. And that's where those high-growth arenas come back in.
Right. We have to figure out where the opportunities are and how we can use them to create...
Both financial success and a positive impact.
Exactly. So I'm guessing the first step is to really dig into those 18 arenas McKinsey identified.
Yeah, it's like going back to school and learning everything you can about these trends and technologies.
Get the books.
Yeah. And once you have a good understanding of what's driving growth in these areas, the next step is to figure out how these trends connect to your own business or your own interests.
So it's not just about understanding the trends generally, it's about
Making it personal. Think about your strengths, what you're passionate about, and where you see those things aligning with what the world needs.
finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. And once you've identified those points of alignment, you can start brainstorming ideas and strategies.
So we're talking about actually coming up with plans for how we can use these high growth areas to achieve...
Both profit and purpose.
Yes.
That's right.
Mm.
And this is where creativity and innovation are really important.
So thinking outside the box and coming up with solutions that are both profitable and good for society.
Yeah, and remember, you don't have to start from scratch. Look for ways to build on what you're already good at and use the resources you have.
Be resourceful, be strategic.
Exactly. And lastly, Krantz really emphasizes being adaptable and having a mindset of constantly learning new things.
Love that. It's like we need to be lifelong learners.
Yeah, always curious and ready to grow our knowledge.
The world's changing so fast, we have to keep up.
Exactly. If you want to stay ahead, we need to be constantly learning and adapting.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change. But it doesn't have to be scary. It can be exciting.
It definitely can be.
Okay, so to sum up, if we want to achieve profit with a purpose, we need to understand how value is created, get out of our echo chambers, keep learning, and be open to change.
You got it. And the Profit Plus model gives us a way to do just that.
It's like a roadmap for navigating this new world and creating a future where profit and purpose aren't seen as opposites, but as partners in making the world a better place.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And I can't wait to hear more about how we can put this Profit Plus model into practice. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about Krantz's Profit Plus model and how we can actually use it to, make a difference. So how do we actually do that?
Well, it all starts with those 18 high growth arenas, right?
Right.
Those aren't just like theoretical ideas, they're real opportunities for people to align their work with.
Profit and purpose.
Exactly.
So where do we start with this Profit Plus thing? Well, Krantz suggests we really need to understand these high growth arenas first.
Like become experts in them.
Yeah, kind of. Dive into those 18 arenas that McKinsey identified and,
Do some research.
yeah, exactly. What technologies and trends are driving growth in each area? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities?
Okay. So I need to really get to know these areas.
Right. You want to be able to spot those opportunities that really fit with your own skills and interests.
So let's say I've done my research. I found a few arenas that I'm really interested in. What's next?
This is where it gets really interesting. Krantz says we need to figure out how these trends connect to our own work or our own interests.
So how do these big trends translate into like concrete things I can do?
Exactly. Ask yourself, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And where do you see your skills matching up with what the world needs?
It's about finding that sweet spot where your skills and the needs of the world kind of come together.
Yes. And once you've found that, you can start thinking about how to use your unique position within those high growth areas.
Okay, so I've found my niche. I've got some ideas. What now?
Now it's time to get strategic. Krantz says one thing you can do is identify the winners in these arenas.
The people who are already doing well?
Yeah, the companies or individuals who are already successful. What are they doing that's working?
So learn from the best.
Exactly. Pay attention to their strategies, their business models. You can learn a lot from their successes.
Okay, so I've identified some winners. I've learned from them. What's the next strategic move?
This one might sound a little out there, but Krantz suggests we embrace something called futures thinking.
Futures thinking. What's that?
It's about, not trying to predict the future exactly, but
Yeah.
more about exploring different possibilities and thinking about the potential impacts of these changes.
So preparing for different scenarios.
Right. The future's unpredictable, and futures thinking helps you stay adaptable.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful, especially in these fast-changing markets. How do I actually, do futures thinking?
Well, it starts with questioning your assumptions. Don't just focus on one possible outcome. Consider multiple outcomes.
Okay.
Think about, the first-order effects of a trend and then the second-order effects. It helps you see potential risks and opportunities that you might miss otherwise.
So thinking about the long-term consequences, not just the immediate ones.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to get this futures thinking thing. Any other advice from Krantz?
One more really important thing. She emphasizes being adaptable and having a mindset of always learning new things.
We talked about that before, right? Being lifelong learners.
Exactly. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you got to keep learning.
Because things change so fast.
I do too.
It's like embrace the change, be ready to adapt, and never stop learning.
I love that. Embrace the change.
Any other final thoughts before we move on?
Just remember that you don't have to do this alone. There are lots of resources and communities out there that can support you. Don't be afraid to, reach out to other people who are passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, it's always easier when you have other people to support you.
It is. Surround yourself with people who inspire you and challenge you. That's how we create a future where profit and purpose work together.
Love that. So we've got a lot to think about here, but let's dive even deeper into some specific strategies for putting these ideas into action. So we've been talking about some pretty big ideas, and I'm sure some people are thinking, okay, this is all well and good, but how do I actually do this stuff?
I think that's a really valid question, right?
Yeah, it's one thing to, understand the ideas.
But actually putting them into practice.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
So let's get practical. What are some actual steps we can take to start aligning our work with both profit and purpose?
Well, remember those 18 high growth arenas we talked about? They're a good starting point.
Yeah.
Instead of getting overwhelmed by how big these markets are,
Right.
try picking one or two that really speak to you.
Yeah. Find your niche, where your passions and skills meet the needs of the world.
Exactly. Once you've found a couple that you're interested in, go deeper. Research the key players, the trends, the challenges. Look for places where you can use your skills to really make a difference,
So it's like becoming an expert in a specific area.
but with purpose driving you.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to do it all alone, right?
Definitely not. One of the best things you can do is connect with other people who are also passionate about
Profit with a purpose.
Exactly. It's so valuable to have a supportive network, especially when you're trying to do something new.
For sure. Where can people find these, like-minded folks?
Oh, there's so many great communities and resources out there. Online forums, industry events, even local meetups. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who are already doing amazing things in the areas you're interested in.
Yeah, it's like building a team of people who want to change the world.
Exactly. And when you surround yourself with those kinds of people, people who inspire you and push you to grow, you're more likely to achieve your goals.
This has been such a great conversation. So as we wrap up our deep dive into profit with a purpose, is there one key message you want our listeners to take away?
I think the most important thing to remember is that we all have the power to make a positive impact on the world.
Hmm,
I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but
it's true.
yeah, it is. The choices we make, the things we do, they all matter.
It's not just about the money, it's about making a difference.
Exactly. And when you combine that desire for profit with a real sense of purpose,
Yeah,
you can create something truly special.
well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of profit with a purpose. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And here's a final thought to leave you with. If you could create a business that solved a major global problem and made a profit, what would it be?